The stars above the cerulean throne shimmered like a living canopy, their light refracted through crystal arches grown rather than built. Queen Aurelix of the Violian Concord stood before her court, tall and radiant, her iridescent mantle flowing like liquid light. This marriage was not born of love, but of survival, a treaty sealed in flesh and vow. The humans had come from a brutal world of storms and iron, a death world that forged its children hard and unyielding. To secure peace along the outer spiral, Aurelix had agreed to take a human consort, a symbolic bond meant to deter war. The chosen human was called Marcus Hale, a quiet figure who stood now at her side, hands clasped behind his back, eyes steady. He wore no jewels, no armor, only simple ceremonial attire, as if he were a guard rather than a groom. The court whispered, some in curiosity, others in thinly veiled contempt. Humans were known as traders, explorers, sometimes mercenaries, but never legends. Aurelix studied him through multifaceted perception. His biofield was calm, almost deceptively so. No pheromonal display of dominance, no nervous tremor, just stillness. She had expected a warrior boasting of past glories or a diplomat dripping charm. Instead, she had been given a man who spoke little and listened much. During the bonding rites, Marcus met her gaze without challenge or submission. It unsettled her more than arrogance ever could. When the vows were complete and the psychic seal closed, the court erupted in ritual song. The alliance was forged, the threat of war delayed. That night, alone on a balcony overlooking the capital sea, Aurelix reflected on her choice. She felt no thrill, no spark of destiny, only relief that her people would sleep easier. Marcus joined her silently, offering a cup of warmed human spice drink. She accepted out of courtesy, noting again how he seemed to anticipate needs without being told. "You are far from your world," she said at last. He inclined his head. "I have been far from my world before, Your Majesty." The way he said it hinted at stories he did not intend to share. Aurelix dismissed the thought. Legends announced themselves loudly, and this man was quiet. She did not yet know that silence was the hallmark of those who had survived what others could not. Peace lasted less than a cycle. Beyond the Concord borders, the Karax swarm gathered, a devouring armada that respected no treaty and feared no reprisal. Their biofleets moved like a plague through star systems, stripping worlds to their cores. The Concord Navy mobilized, but fear spread faster than orders. Aurelix convened her war council, hologlyphs of burning systems casting harsh light across the chamber. Admirals spoke in clipped tones, their crests dim with anxiety. The swarm outnumbered them 3-1, and their adaptive weaponry had broken greater empires. Marcus stood at the edge of the chamber, as he always did, silent and unobtrusive. When an aide dismissed him as a ceremonial liability, Aurelix felt an unexpected flicker of irritation. He was her consort, even if only by treaty. As projections shifted to show the likely invasion route, Marcus spoke, his voice calm but carrying. "They will not strike the border first," he said. Every eye turned toward him, some in disbelief, others in annoyance. The lead admiral demanded justification. Marcus stepped forward, pointing to a cluster of systems near the Galactic shoals. "They will feint here, then fold inward, targeting your shipyards and command relays. It is how the swarm has always fought when facing organized resistance." Aurelix searched the archives mentally, cross-referencing ancient battle records. To her surprise, his prediction aligned with classified data few outside the High Command had studied. "How do you know this?" she asked. Marcus met her gaze. "I have fought them before." The room fell silent. Humans had skirmished with the swarm at the edge of explored space, but records of full-scale engagements were scarce. Most human fleets that encountered the swarm did not return. The admirals scoffed, but doubt crept into their certainty. Aurelix felt something shift within her perception, a faint echo of the psychic bond formed during marriage. For the first time, she sensed depth beneath Marcus' calm exterior, layers of memory scarred by fire and loss. She ordered the council to consider his analysis. Reluctantly, they adjusted their defensive posture. If he was wrong, they would lose valuable time. If he was right, he might save their civilization. Marcus returned to her side, saying nothing. Aurelix watched the stars beyond the chamber windows and wondered just what kind of man she had bound herself to. The Karax swarm arrived not with a roar, but with a suffocating silence. Sensors screamed warnings as void space folded and vomited forth organic war hulks. Just as Marcus had predicted, the initial attack was a feint. The Concord fleet scrambled, formations breaking under the swarm's relentless advance. Boarding organisms pierced hulls like parasites. On the command deck of the flagship, Aurelix felt fear ripple through her crew. When a breach alert sounded near the throne deck, guards moved to evacuate the Queen. Marcus stepped forward, his calm shattering at last. "There is no time," he said, arming himself with a fallen weapon. Aurelix saw him then, truly saw him. The quiet diplomat moved with lethal efficiency, every motion precise, economical. He disabled a charging Karax warrior with a single strike, then another, adapting instantly to their movements. Mori poured through the breach, chitin and claws filling the corridor. Marcus took command without shouting, directing guards into overlapping fields of fire. He anticipated the swarm tactics as if reading from a script. Aurelix felt the psychic bond flare, memories flooding her awareness. A burning human world, orbital defenses collapsing, a lone fleet standing against impossible odds. She saw Marcus younger, scarred, commanding ships that fought until nothing remained but debris and resolve. He had not survived by luck. He had survived by becoming something the enemy could not predict. When the corridor finally fell silent, the deck littered with fallen swarm, Marcus stood breathing hard, bloodied but unbowed. He turned to Aurelix, checking her for injury before himself. In that moment, Aur replaced every doubt she had ever held. "You are more than you claimed," she said softly. He gave a grim smile. "I claimed nothing." Across the system, Concord forces rallied, using his strategies to turn the tide. The swarm advance slowed, then fractured. Hope spread like wildfire. The battle raged for days, stars blinking out as weapons of terrifying scale were unleashed. Marcus was everywhere at once, coordinating defenses, leading counterstrikes, even piloting a fighter when needed. Stories spread through the fleet of a human who could not be killed. But legends always demand payment. During the final push, the swarm launched a desperate assault on the flagship. Aurelix felt a surge of terror through the bond as Marcus led a boarding action to stop it. She followed despite protests, refusing to remain behind while her consort faced death. Together they fought through smoke and ruin, queen and human side by side. When the swarm core was finally destroyed, the backlash tore through the deck. Marcus shielded Aurelix with his own body, taking the brunt of the blast. She screamed his name as he fell, the psychic bond screaming with her. Medics rushed in, their faces grim. Hours passed like lifetimes. When Marcus finally stirred, weak but alive, the relief nearly shattered her composure. He looked up at her, eyes unfocused, and tried to joke about the view. Tears she had not shed in centuries fell freely. In that moment, Aurelix understood that what began as convenience had become something far deeper. The swarm retreated, broken and burning. The Concord was saved, but it would remember the cost. The victory celebration filled the capital with light and song. Marcus was hailed as a hero, his name spoken with reverence across worlds. He accepted it all with the same quiet humility. Before the gathered concord, Aurelix took his hand, no longer as a symbol but as a partner. She spoke of courage, of sacrifice, and of a human who had stood against the dark when hope failed. She named him Defender of the Spiral, a title no outsider had ever held. Later, alone beneath the stars, Aurelix rested her forehead against his. "I thought I wed a pawn in a political game," she confessed. "Instead, I wed a legend." Marcus smiled softly. "Legends are just people who did what had to be done." She laughed, a sound filled with warmth. "Then let history decide what to call you," she said. "I know who you are to me." As their worlds moved forward into a hard-won peace, the story of the alien queen and her human consort spread across the galaxy. Not as myth, but as truth. And in that truth, countless civilizations found hope. Peace is never silent, it hums with unfinished echoes. In the months following the swarm retreat, the Concord rebuilt shattered fleets and scarred worlds. Shipyards glowed day and night, birthing new vessels from crystal alloy and living metal. Citizens spoke Marcus Hale's name in tones once reserved for ancient heroes. Aurelix watched it all from the heights of the cerulean throne. Her people were safe, her borders secure, yet her thoughts were rarely on politics now. They were on the human who walked beside her, slower than before, bearing wounds no healer could fully erase. Marcus never complained. Pain was an old companion, one he had learned to acknowledge and then ignore. But Aurelix felt every ache through the bond, each flare of old scars reminding her that legends were written in suffering. "You should rest more," she said one evening as they stood overlooking the capital sea. Its bioluminescent tides rolled gently beneath twin moons. Marcus smiled faintly. "Rest feels strange when you are used to waiting for the next alarm." She studied him then, truly studied him. Not as a queen weighing an ally, not as a ruler judging a symbol, but as a partner learning the shape of another soul. The scars on his hands told stories he never voiced. The quiet pauses before sleep spoke of memories that still walked beside him. The Concord Council soon learned that victory brought its own dangers. Smaller powers, emboldened by the swarm defeat, tested borders and treaties. Pirate clans and warlords sought fragments of swarm technology, believing it would make them unstoppable. At every council session, eyes turned toward Marcus. Not because he demanded authority, but because his presence carried certainty. When he spoke, even the most prideful admirals listened. One such session ended with grim projections filling the chamber. A rogue coalition had seized a former swarm breeding world, converting it into a fortress. If left unchecked, it would become a blade at the Concord's throat. Aurelix felt the weight of command settle upon her once more. Before she could speak, Marcus inclined his head. "I will go," he said simply. The room erupted in protest. He was a hero, a symbol, too valuable to risk. Aurelix felt fear twist within her, sharp and instinctive. "No," she said, her voice carrying the authority of her crown and the vulnerability of her heart. "You have given enough." Marcus met her gaze, and in his eyes she saw the same fire that had burned on dying worlds. "This is what I do, Aurelix. I stand where the storm breaks. If I do not, someone else will, and they may not survive it." The bond pulsed between them, heavy with unspoken truth. She understood then that loving a legend meant accepting that they would always walk toward danger. She exhaled slowly. "Very well," she said, "but you will not go alone." Thus began the campaign historians would later call the Second Crucible. Marcus led a coalition strike force, Concord ships flying beside human warcraft bearing ancient hull scars. Veterans who had once served under him returned without hesitation, answering a call that needed no words. The rogue fortress world was a nightmare. The atmosphere poisoned, the surface riddled with organic remnants that still twitched with half-dead instinct. Enemy forces had learned just enough from swarm remnants to be terrifyingly unpredictable. Marcus adapted as he always had. He moved through chaos with calm precision, turning enemy innovation against them. Where others saw horror, he saw patterns. Aurelix followed the campaign through constant reports, her composure unshaken before her court. But alone, she reached through the bond, offering strength, presence, warmth. Marcus felt it like a steady hand on his shoulder, even in the midst of battle. The final assault came at dawn of the fortress world's dim star. Explosions tore through the sky, lighting clouds like burning oceans. Marcus led the ground insertion personally, knowing command alone was not enough. The enemy fought savagely, desperate and fanatical. In the heart of the fortress, Marcus confronted their leader, a warlord encased in stolen swarm armor. The battle was brutal, raw, stripped of glory. Blades shattered, weapons overheated. In the end, Marcus won not through strength alone, but through endurance. He always endured. When the fortress fell, the galaxy exhaled. The Concord stood unchallenged, not through tyranny, but through resolve. Marcus returned to the capital changed, quieter somehow, though many thought that impossible. Aurelix greeted him not as queen, but as his wife, her embrace fierce and unrestrained. "You came back," she whispered. He rested his forehead against hers. "Always," he said, "as long as there is something worth returning to." In the years that followed, legends crystallized into history. Children across the Concord learned of the human consort who faced the swarm and lived. But fewer knew of the nights he woke in silence, or the way Aurelix held him until the memories loosened their grip. Together, they reshaped the Concord. Policies once driven by fear were replaced with preparedness and unity. Worlds previously ignored were fortified and protected. Marcus refused monuments, but Aurelix compromised. Instead of statues, she commissioned academies, places where warriors and diplomats alike learned strategy, restraint, and the cost of violence. Above every entrance were words attributed to Marcus Hale. Survival is not about being the strongest, it is about refusing to break. As decades passed, and even the long-lived Violians began to mark time, the question of mortality arose. Humans burned bright and brief compared to Aurelix's kind. The thought of a future without Marcus was a shadow she could never fully escape. One evening, beneath familiar stars, she finally spoke it aloud. "I will outlive you," she said, her voice steady despite the ache beneath it. Marcus nodded. "I know. That does not frighten me," she admitted. "What frightens me is ruling without you beside me." He took her hands, scarred fingers warm against luminous skin. "You will not rule alone," he said. "You will rule with everything we built together." The bond between them deepened, no longer just a psychic link, but a shared legacy. When the day finally came that Marcus Hale died, it was not in battle. It was beneath the same stars where they had first spoken as strangers. Aurelix felt the bond fade like a sunset, painful and beautiful. The galaxy mourned, but she did not collapse. Because legends do not truly leave, they become foundations. Centuries later, when new threats whispered at the edge of known space, the Concord stood firm. Guided by doctrines forged by a human who once stood quietly at the edge of a throne room. And in the deepest chamber of the cerulean throne, Aurelix kept a single human relic. A simple band, worn smooth by time and battle. She would touch it when doubt crept close. And remember the day she watched her human consort fight. The day she realized she had not wed a symbol, but a legend who had taught the galaxy how to endure.